A young Western man is choosing, becoming a monk, an ascetic and celibate, in the Burmese tradition of Theravadan or Southeast Asian Buddhism. He, like other Westerners before him, has decided to renounce the worldly life for a rigorous, demanding schedule of meditation and study. He is entering into a tradition that is 2,500 years old, and it is enjoying a renaissance thanks to a Burmese meditation master, Mahasi Sayadaw.
If desire ends, clinging and pleasure-seeking karma will also come to an end. With the ending of karma, there will be an end of rebirth along with the suffering of old age and death. Realizing all these facts, the Bodhisattva meditated.
Interesting thing that Mahasi Sayadaw has come to this country. He is the foremost meditation teacher, master, and scholar in the entire Theravada world, which encompasses the most extensive order of monks and the largest number of Buddhist followers that exist in the world today, perhaps 50 million or 100 million Buddhists and a 500,000 monks. He has been more influential than any other teacher in this century, and perhaps for many hundreds of years, in establishing an interest and revival in extended and deep meditation practice, and has trained in his centers and through his disciples and students almost 1 million people in intensive insight meditation practice. He was the head of the council that celebrated the 2,500th year of the Buddhist teachings in Burma, one of the most important figures as a scholar and as a man to revive the importance of the Buddhist psychological and scriptural teachings. And through his life he has been an incredibly respected and profound influence on the Buddhist countries in which he's lived and taught, Burma, Ceylon, Thailand. His coming to the West at the age of 75, to me, feels like the final teaching assignment in his life, the final flowering or expression of his great impact in the Buddhist world. Mahasi Sayadaw, in his own home country, is considered to be fully enlightened. What that means is he is a man who has penetrated to the very depths of the Buddhist teaching and so transformed his mind through understanding and through purification that, theoretically anyway, no longer do fear or greed or hatred or anger even arise within his mind. It is a mind that is so balanced and so present in each moment without these qualities of grasping that its whole relationship to the world is simply one of awareness and compassion through his teaching and loving kindness.
According to Indian practice, the yogi must sit in cross-legged position. This is directed to enable the yogi to sit for long. According to the practice of some parts of the world, one may also sit on a chair and meditate. Ujokayam Panidhaya. The upper part of the body must be kept straight. The mind should be directed towards the object of the meditation. The mind should be directed towards the object of meditation. Vipassana Vipassana meditation means observing every phenomenon occurring at the six sense doors.
Jack Cornfield is a man who has spent 5 years in Southeast Asia as a Buddhist monk undergoing traditional training in the Theravadan monasteries of Burma, Thailand, and Laos. He has a PhD in psychology and a master's degree studying clinical psychology and its relation to meditation as a clinical tool in a Western psychological tradition. He has spent the past 6 years teaching retreats and meditation of Buddhist psychology in universities and retreat settings throughout this country.
Mahasi Sayadaw chose to begin his Dharma teaching last night by reviewing the life of the Buddha himself. The Buddha practiced the perfections of compassion and virtue, of concentration, wisdom, and eventually was reborn as a small-town prince in Nepal, northern India, grew up in the palace life, was married to a beautiful princess, but at some time in his youth went out and discovered that even though one be born into the most fortunate circumstances in this life, as the Prince Siddhartha was born, still there was the basic human difficulties for all of us of old age, of sickness, of death, of the kinds of sorrow and suffering of being separated from that which we love at some point, or associated with that which we do not. And so, in seeing these as the basic human, inevitable human problems and conditions, Prince Siddhartha left home to find an answer to these question of human suffering for himself and out of compassion for all beings. Upon leaving home, he studied with the greatest teachers of India at that time and mastered jhanas or trances, concentration to a very high degree. He was able to make his mind pure and peaceful and still. But every time he came out of these trances, he still discovered that there was craving and grasping and prejudice and hatred in the mind that remained for him when he was no longer attentive to his meditation. He undertook many years of ascetic practice, self-mortification and torture of the body as a way to purify himself, but also discovered that this didn't uproot these difficulties and problems in the mind, didn't solve the most basic problem of inner liberation. And so, withdrawing from his ascetic practices and undertaking what became the central component of his teaching, the middle path, he took food, sat down under the Bodhi tree with the resolve to practice until he became fully enlightened, came to that complete and total freedom and liberation of mind, which he then taught with great loving kindness and compassion and skill for 45 years, for the rest of his life, throughout that area of Asia and India. Our own problem of dealing with suffering and sorrow and the difficulties that arise in our lives is identical with that of the Buddha. And the teachings have been given in order for us to apply and understand these basic truths of that which brings difficulty and sorrow through grasping, and that which is the potential for each one of us of insight and liberation of our hearts.
This tape records a personal transmission. Here, Mahasi Sayadaw's 54-year-old translator, U Silananda, a Burmese monk, explains how Mahasi Sayadaw went to his teacher to receive his first initiation.
Sayadaw decided to go to Mingun Sayadaw and practice under his guidance. When the Venerable Sayadaw reached Mingun Sayadaw, on the night when he reached, Venerable Sayadaw gave instructions to the Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw on Satipatthana meditation. This instruction was according to the Satipatthana Sutta, to note walking when the yogi is walking, to note lying when he is lying, to note sitting when he is sitting, and also to note the physical and mental activities, all the physical and mental activities, and also to note when they occur. Sayadaw practiced Vipassana meditation under Mingun Sayadaw for 4 months. Sayadaw intended to stay there for 1 year, but circumstances did not permit Sayadaw to stay there for a year. I'll tell you later that when Sayadaw was practicing Vipassana meditation there, Sayadaw said he practiced intensely and with vigor and energy. There were days and nights when Sayadaw did not have even a wink. He did not sleep at all for 24 hours. And there were some days and nights when he did not speak even a word to other people, and without any break. And for a month, Sayadaw had to go on alms every day. And when going out for alms, Sayadaw marked every step, stepping, and also everything he saw and heard, and everything that went on his mind. So without any break, Sayadaw diligently practiced Vipassana meditation. Started practicing Vipassana meditation, he was only 28 years old. Sayadaw was born in 1904, and so Sayadaw started practicing Vipassana meditation in 1932. And after that time, Sayadaw practiced himself, but as he was a little young, he did not preach, give instructions to other people. But one day, Sayadaw's younger brother died, and Sayadaw was alarmed and thought that my brother died not having practiced Vipassana meditation because I have not given him instructions. And from that time on, Sayadaw was intent on giving instruction Vipassana meditation. And that opportunity Sayadaw got in 1938.
This tradition, which began in Burma, moved to the Western world. Munindra, an Indian of a Buddhist family from Calcutta, became the missing link. Munindra is an Anagarika, which literally translates as he who has no home. Not quite monk, and certainly not householder, the 65-year-old man sleeps an average of 3.5 hours a night. He is a proficient Sanskrit scholar and has held many positions of importance pertaining to Buddhist affairs for the Indian government.
And in the meantime, the government of Burma, the then Prime Minister of Burma, invited me to go to Burma to learn Dhamma, to practice meditations. And on leave for 3 months, I went to Burma. And there, and I, with some of two of other friends, I went to Burma, and went to Tathanikta, the main international meditation center in Burma, which where Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw was the chief meditation master. I was placed at his disposal. I spent nearly 9 years there, but within 5 years I completed the whole study, and as a brahmachari, anagarika, not as a monk, because as a monk I thought that if I become monk, and I have to oblige the Dayakas supporters and to go there and to accompany this monk, going for alms begging. I may not find right time, and I may waste time in this way. So that's why I prefer to remain as brahmachari. Training, I taught many students in Burma. Then I thought I must leave for India. And when I arrived in India, since my arrival in 1967, since that time, I begin to teach. But there is no proper center in Buddha Gaya, and it was difficult. In the beginning, I was staying in some guest house there. Then, at the request of the Samanvaya Ashram, which is established by Acharya Vinoba Bhave, one of the friend and disciples of Mahatma Gandhi. There is a Gandhi Ashram at Buddha Gaya. So they invited me to stay there, and I spent several years there, and people came to know about my coming, and some professor, students, and some Marwaris business people from Buddha Gaya, they used to come often and on to hear, to discuss Dhamma, to practice there in Buddha Gaya. And also during my stay there, and I used to meet people from all over the world.
There, he met and taught Joseph Goldstein, an American who now teaches meditation globally.
Finished my Peace Corps tour, I returned to America and began to practice meditation on my own. After a short time, I realized the importance and the need for having systematic guidance and instruction, feeling a real important need for a teacher, and decided at that time to return to Asia. My plan was to eventually end up in Thailand with a stopover in India, where some friends had given me the names of various teachers there. I went to India, and through a series of circumstances, I ended up in Bodh Gaya, the place where the Buddha was enlightened, where I met my first teacher of meditation, Anagarika Munindra. And that was how I ended up in India. I decided to stay there and do the intensive practice. For me, most in the beginning was less the personal connection and more the attunement to the Dhamma practice itself. The explanation of the practice was so simple and so pure, and it resonated really deeply with my own experience, that I became very inspired and motivated to continue with the practice. Over a period of months and years of being close with Munindraji, I then developed a close personal relationship also. But in the beginning it was very much the attunement to the practice.
Individually, whatever I could, being in the ashram, I was helping people, sharing my experiences, teaching them. But I was not satisfied with my teaching. I could not devote full time, and I had an intention, a plan to train a band of young boys and girls, male and female, both theory and practice, and to train in samatha and vipassana thoroughly, and when there is a proper arrangement. But this could not happen.
Joseph, 9 or 10 years ago in Bodh Gaya, when he came to you as a student, do you remember that time, or do you remember your early impressions of him, and can you talk about your relationship with him since?
And like attracts like, there is a proverb, like attracts like, and wherever when we meet people, when persons affinity with similar kind of ideals or characteristic, at once you become friend. Here, of course, in Buddha Dhamma, and we say the Kalyana Mitra, not the hanging around the guru, but we say the Kalyana Mitra, a spiritual friend. And he has spent nearly 6 years there, studying, practicing, and sometime in summertime go to the hill, coming back to the Buddha Gaya again, studying, practicing. So he is very one of the students who is very sincere and earnest and devoted, and in the batch in the groups of the in the beginning state when I came from Burma, and I suppose and also he received the teachings. Mind was very receptive, received the teaching, and understood it clearly and practiced very sincerely and successfully. And I think he is one of the best students in those days.
Learned many things. I learned the quality of simplicity, of allowing the mind to take things in a simple and easy way, not to allow the mind to complicate unnecessarily one's ongoing experience. I also learned, through his own example, of understanding that there was no need to hold on to a self-image, whether a worldly self-image, a spiritual self-image. He himself was a model of somebody who was so completely himself in all the circumstances that I could observe him, without any kind of image that he was projecting. And that was a great freedom. There was a great freedom in seeing that we didn't have to hold on to a model of personality, to a model of a way of behaving in beginning a spiritual path.
I know that after establishing the center in Rangoon of Datanayetta, that his teaching spread very wide in Burma, and that there have been many 100,000, perhaps almost 1 million students who have practiced Burma and Thailand and Sri Lanka. Here in this room, there are now several generations of students of Sayadaw Piyaji. There is Sayadaw Piya himself, and there's Anagarika Munindra, who studied long ago in Burma, and then his student who studied 10 years ago in Buddha Gaya, Joseph, and Joseph's student, who is Alan, who's sitting behind him. What does Sayadaw Piya think of this? Is it going okay?
Now Sayadaw Piya ye debate with the Munindra. Like Munindra ye debate the Goldstein. The Goldstein ye debate who began now Adilu say a senate Tima de Lupin in our Sayadaw Piya the boy Java.
4 generations now.
Yeah. Munindra ji practice Vipassana meditation under Sayadaw's instructions. And Munindra ji in turn taught Vipassana meditation to other people, and Mr. Joseph practiced Vipassana meditation from him. And Mr. Joseph in your turn taught to other people, and so Sayadaw was very glad and satisfied with all of you doing here. And Sayadaw said it is needless to say that he was happy and satisfied with you all. But he wanted to ask you to carry on this tradition and to make progress in the future. That's what he wants.
Retreat is the most important aspect of practice. For 2 weeks, like this one, or a lifetime, like U Silananda's, both styles are compared, ours and Burmese.
For this 2-week retreat, the schedule is already posted, I believe, on the bulletin board, and it will involve an alternation of sitting and walking meditation, starting with a bell tomorrow morning at 4:30 to wake up, and a sitting from 5 to 6, and a period for walking meditation, then breakfast at 6:30, and then again walking period or time to do yoga or exercise. Following that, they'll be sitting and walking alternately from 8 o'clock until 11:30 lunch for an hour or 45 minutes each of sitting and walking, all on the schedule.
About 10:30, we had our lunch. And from 12 to 1 o'clock, we take rest. And from 1 o'clock until evening, we have study again. The same as in the morning. We go to various teachers and study different subjects.
6 o'clock, a sitting followed each night by a Dharma talk given by the Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw. And then, again, a couple more hours of sitting and walking until late tea at 9:30, and then bedtime or further practice for those who are awake.
Routine. Yeah. And the night lessons consist of the lessons in Abhidhamma, because Abhidhamma is very popular in our country. And these Abhidhamma lessons were arranged so that we can study or learn Abhidhamma during the night. During the day, we study these texts and the explanations of them. And at night, before a teacher, we go before a teacher and we recited what we have learned during the day, and he gave explanations to it.
The schedule basically gives you very little time to do anything else but to pay attention to yourself. While you're here, please refrain from reading, from writing, from speaking, from being involved in other activities. This 2 weeks is a very precious time, and its essence, its purpose, is to learn about yourself in the most deep way that you can, to pay attention and listen to the body, to the mind, to the emotions, to all the parts of your experience with care and with concentration from the moment that you awaken all the way until the time that you go to sleep.
Personal interviews between student and teacher are used to monitor progress according to a pre-existing series of mental states which the teacher may guide the student towards.
The concentration, that is for the jhanic states.
Also, sometimes in my sitting practice, when my mind gets very quiet, I begin to lose a sense of separation from the objects of awareness. A sound will arise, and there will be no sense of someone hearing the sound, but just the sound arising in space. Or if I'm sitting talking with someone, sometimes there's the sense of the other person and myself just both being in space and not the same kind of separateness.
သူတခြားတွေလည်းမှတ်ပါတယ်ဗျာအတန်ကြီးကြားတဲ့ခါမှတ်တဲ့ခါကျလို့ရှိရင်သူအာယုံကဘာအတန်ရဲ့လို့တောင်မရောက်ပါဘူးတဲ့အတန်ကြားတဲ့လောက်ကိုသူကြောက်ဖြုတ်တမာရီဖြစ်ဘူးပါတယ်ကြားပြီးပြောက်ပါတယ် Do you think that when you hear the sound arises and passes away, or just a continuous sound you are hearing?
No, it arises and passes away.
အတန်ကကြားလိုက်ပြောက်လိုက်ကြားလိုက်ပြောက်လိုက်ဖြစ်သွားပါတယ် And when you hear that sound like this, do you know the meaning of the sound? In case somebody is talking, you hear somebody talking, and if the sound is not continuous, you may not be able to follow what is the talking. Do you have this kind of sensation? Or do you follow what the other people is speaking in case you're hearing somebody speaking?
Well, sometimes it's just sound, and I don't
follow the
what so quickly that I don't understand the words. Sometimes if a sound arises, I notice that my mind will make a note of what the sound is, like bird or car. Sometimes a sound arises and that note doesn't come, just sound.
ခုနပြောလို့ယမယံခါတော့ဖြစ်ပါလေတဲ့သူအတန်ကိုဆိုလို့ရှိရင်စကားပြောတဲ့အတန်တော့မှ Sakabio, Atana Batida, Body Pure Satumtiva. Here Atani solution at Yamba Yakaro, Atanjada, Tide, Pahet Atilumtiva. Yamba Yakarole, Tiba, the user Jive and Akuit and Tiba.
Can't be in the can't put on a for Macau near Kajara, Javi, Paero, the Javi Jogara, Jare Bane Jogara, Javi Jogara.
So Sayadaw said it is very good that when you hear the sound, you hear that as simply there's a bare attention of the sound, and it also you notice that it arises and passes away. So Sayadaw said, when Mahasi Sayadaw advise you that you also, during your sitting meditation, try to be aware of the sitting posture and how it is, the weight, how it happened. Because since your concentration power is very good, and try to improve your concentration power so that whenever you hear the sound, it be just bare sound. You don't have the idea that it's a bird sound, it's a sound of a dog.
People often think that meditation is a withdrawal from the world or an otherworldly activity. Actually, what happens is a very direct and immediate experience of one's own mind and body, of getting into an intimate communication, an intimate understanding of how one's own experience is happening. And so rather than being a withdrawal from the world, it's rather an opening to oneself and how one responds to the world and one's environment in a very deep and immediate way. Using the breath as a foundation of practice, simply training the mind to become somewhat concentrated and calm, allows for the possibility of opening up to a deeper awareness of all the other more subtle mind-body processes. And so we begin to tune to the different levels of bodily energies that are going on, to release a lot of the tension that we hold in our bodies through the practice of awareness. We begin in the practice to become aware of thoughts and feelings and sensations, all kinds of mental phenomena as well, and it leads to a real understanding of how the mind is working. Tradition in Asia for the support of teachers is that the teaching is always given freely. There's no charge for the teaching itself. Bringing this tradition to America, we found the need to charge at retreats to cover the cost of food and lodging. But we didn't want to include in that cost any kind of salary or remuneration for the teachers as a way of maintaining that tradition of offering the teachings in a freely given way. So we rely on what is called dana in Pali language. Dana means offering. At the end of retreats, any of the students who wish can make an offering or contribute some dana, which we use for our support.
And this is how you've been living for the past 5 years or so?
Right.
Uh-huh.
It's a very wonderful relationship then between student and teacher. It's another way of making a meaningful contact.
Amma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Buddhaṃ saranam gacchāmi, Dhammāṃ saranam gacchāmi, Sanghaṃ saranam gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Buddhaṃ saranam gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Dhammāṃ saranam gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Sanghaṃ saranam gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranam gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammāṃ saranam gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghang Saranang Gacchami Nyadana Varamani Sikhabdam Samadhiyami Kama Summa Chachara Varamani Sikhabdam Samadhiyami Abrahmacharya Varamani Sikhabdam Samadhiyami Musavada Varamani Sikhabdam Samadhiyami Sura